Okay, are we back? Can everybody see me now? Because that kind of sucked. Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but OBS decided no stream anymore. Yeah, you're going to call me insane, and kind of am, but I am streaming, would you believe, from my laptop using the Wi-Fi. It's a bit of a quirk of my current Studio B home setup that I couldn't drill a hole in the floor and have a cable coming straight up into this room. So for the time being, I was kind of hoping that the Wi-Fi connection would be fine, and it seems that a dropout every now and again is going to happen. So what I'm going to do, and I've been contemplating this, but this has just been the nail in the coffin, I'm going to get one of those power line kits, because I used those power line kits in the main studio, because the way that the main studio is built, all the walls are floating walls, floating ceilings, floating floors. We couldn't then drill holes in that to put Ethernet cables in, because we forgot about that in the planning stage. And that means that because we couldn't drill holes in the walls in the studio, we had to get internet down there. We worked out that we needed a power line system, and that's been the most rock solid thing. So that's what I'm going to do here. By next week's stream, and probably I'm going to order it now on Amazon next day, we'll have hardline internet in this room, because yeah, streaming over Wi-Fi seems to be a bit dodge. So yeah, I'll keep that in mind for next time, because that's crap. Yeah, I've found that powerline Ethernet, it depends where you plug it in and what your systems are like. You cannot use powerline on any kind of extension cord because it's rubbish. I found, again, through experimenting with the studio, because we had to use powerline Ethernet there, that it's better to have the powerline Ethernet really close to a ring main and have a really long Ethernet cable come off it, rather than move the powerline thing closer and have a shorter Ethernet cable. So with experimentation, and I have a 100-meter roll of Ethernet cable, so I can just roll my own in terms of cables, I've found that they're fine. I mean, 5 megabytes a second is what I'm really looking at off them, but 5 megabytes a second is all I really need for a stream, because, I mean, this is 2.5 megabit as a stream, so that's not even a worry. Yeah. Run fibre up the stairs. I like your thinking, but again, having a 1-year-old child in the house, I can't even really cleat cables to walls and that kind of thing, because this house is a rental, so I can't exactly just start knocking holes in things. So powerline Ethernet it's going to be. The AV600 stuff I've found to be pretty rock solid. I mean, the kit that I've been using in the studio is now a couple of years old and has had 0 dropouts on me, which, considering most of the other systems I've had, you get a technical error every couple of weeks somewhere in something. The fact that the networking system has not been it has always impressed me. So yeah, as much as it's not fast, I mean, if I needed 200 or 300 megabit up and down, yeah, not going to happen over powerline, and I know that. So I'm probably still going to use the Wi-Fi for the high speed transfer, because I've actually got just underneath my feet in the kitchen, I've got a power over Ethernet dedicated access point, which is AC Wi-Fi, which is why I figured I could get away with it, because my laptop's got an AC Wi-Fi card in it, and the transfer speeds have been unreal, but every now and again it just decides to drop out. And yeah, so that's not been ideal. But the other thing is, I've got a desktop machine just under this desk. It's an older AMD one. It's not Ryzen. It's slightly older than that. And using XSplit, it was really chugging. But it's funny, using OBS has been absolutely rock solid. Yeah, meanwhile, Wi-Fi should be fine. Should being the operative word. It hasn't been. It drops out every once in a while because it feels like it. And yeah, when it feels like it right in the middle of a podcast, and that's now 2 weeks on the bounce. That's not good enough. So, out it goes. Anyway, back to talking about the speakers. So, Adam Audio. I've got two A7Xs and two of their sub 8s in a stereo configuration. And so I'm all in on the Adam Audio thing. Now, I'm lukewarm when it comes to Focusrite. Maybe I should get back in touch with them and have a conversation with them, because last time I talked to anybody at Focusrite, and this is several years back, they basically just shut me down and said, "Who are you? Don't care. Goodbye." I'd been working with the guys from SE Electronics several years back. This is when the channel had less than 500 subscribers, so retroactive massive thank you to SE, because they were helping us out right from the get-go. And they then became distributed by Focusrite, who basically said, "Don't want to know, go away." And it could have just been a transitional thing. They could be different people now. They could have a different outlook. I don't know. So I might get in contact with them. But yeah, I worked with Adam Audio last year, if I remember rightly, making a couple of videos with them. One was, do you even need a subwoofer? One was about placement of subwoofers and stereo subs. And I found all that fascinating, which is why I still run stereo subs, because I believe that you can hear where sub positioning comes from down to, I don't know, 60 Hz, 50 Hz, 40 Hz, low enough that subwoofers can do that for you. I mean, there is a cut-off point where you can't tell, but that's an added bonus that the subwoofers can do that. That's a secondary thing, so that's why, yeah, Adam Audio have always been, for me, I mean, it turns out that there's a really big kind of 2K dip in Adam Audio speakers, which SonarWorks has helped me bring that back. But that's by the by. These guys are really nice people, and so hopefully that goes well for them. They've announced new products. I mean, they've got a new subwoofer. They've announced a 10-inch sub that's £389, and that's a lot less expensive than the subs. I mean, the 8-inch subs that I got were the sub 8, which were retail. I think they were £600 each, £700 each. Adam sub 8. Let's just Google it. Oh, no, a bit less. $489, I think, is the usual sale price. You can get them a little bit less now. $450-ish each. So you're getting a bigger sub that goes arguably lower for less money. The T-Series is kind of the value proposition. Although it's an interesting thing business-wise, because the guys who designed a lot of the Adam Audio stuff left years ago to make Eve Audio. So I do wonder if the people who are left are just motivated by business. I don't know, and I'm not going to make that assertion, because that's just a supposition that maybe, but I don't know. But if those guys who left to form Eve Audio were replaced by other people who are passionate about their jobs and focused on new products, and I don't know, but I'm guessing from this acquisition by Focusrite, either they were struggling business-wise because they are slightly niche, or perhaps the other alternative, which is Focusrite are so good at distribution and sales that Adam Audio believe that Focusrite will now push them, get them better margins, get them better profits, which is all completely legitimate business. It's the way business works. If you can get your product out to more people for less money, you absolutely would. I absolutely would. If I was selling a thing, let's say a microphone, and I made them, and my expertise was making them, and I wanted to sell them for £100, but nobody had heard about who I was, so I sold a few, but it cost me £70 to get them out to shops. So I've got a £30 margin, say. How about if someone like Focusrite came to me and said, well, if we can help you make them for less money, or we can do the getting it into shops for you. We can get it into more shops. You just focus on doing what you do, which is making the things. We can get them out to the shops for £30 instead of £70, because that's what we do. You just make them, and you will make more money more often because you will sell more of these things because they're in more shops. That's a business no-brainer if you don't have aspirations to be the next Focusrite. If your company doesn't want to be the big all-encompassing behemoth that owns all the other companies, if you just want to make what you make and be happy, successful, and rich, this seems like a sound business plan to me. So, hey, if that's the thing, good luck to him. That's what I say. Anything pop up on guitar news? Nope. I could have sworn I'd seen something here, but... Oh, yes. So, the last version of B.B. King's Lucille, I believe there was more than one, is up for sale. It's going on auction. Now, considering that the David Gilmour Strats went for millions recently, this could go for a lot of money. Apparently, so this isn't quote-unquote the Lucille, because nobody really knows at this point about the Lucille, but this is the guitar that B.B. King took on tour with him for the later part of his life, and he took it everywhere. So it practically could be the Lucille, depending on who you're asking and who you are. I mean, it's quite ornate. It's got B.B. King 80 in the headstock. It's got crowns. It's got B.B. King written on the pickups. That's pretty... Yeah, so it's estimated at $100,000. I bet it'll go for more than that. Way more than that. There's a guitar gifted and signed by Les Paul. Estimated to go for $2,000. Nah, it's going to go for more than that, I'm sure. Yes. So, it absolutely will go for more than that. But yeah, B.B. King's last Lucille, quote-unquote, it's going up on sale. Which I'm guessing his estate are trying to cover some costs or something, because I can't see why they would sell it now otherwise. But, I don't know. I mean, as far as I know, his estate might have the real Lucille and maybe put it up for sale 5 or 10 years from now for squillions, because the guitar collector's market is only going up and up and up and up. So it could be that they're selling this guitar now to keep them going long enough that the real one, when they sell it, if they sell it, and I don't know, would be worth way more than it ever was. So, moving from far-flung news to something far closer to my heart and my what I do, through Two Notes Audio and the Torpedoes, of course I've just mentioned earlier that the Cab M review is coming from me, there is now the anechoic chamber pack from my internet buddy, the Bommel, who talks to me a lot on this channel, and if anyone wants to chat on the channel with me, you are always welcome to. You probably noticed if you've ever put anything in the chat, not only of the live stream, but any of the videos, I tend to be quite chatty, to be honest. So, there are 3 cabinets in this, and what the Bommel has done is he's got a couple of guitar cabs, including a weird old tube radio that he's had converted, and a bass cab. Oh, there he is. Hey, dude. And so, yeah, these are captures of cabinets where I usually capture them in my live room in the studio. He's taken these down into an anechoic chamber, which means no reflections, nothing. You hear about these rooms as being silent and they can send you insane and all that kind of thing. A lot of that I think is media exaggeration, but they are designed with the sole purpose of doing things like testing equipment so that you can isolate it from everything else. If you want to test how a microphone behaves, how a speaker behaves, something that makes sound, how it behaves, you take it into an anechoic chamber, and what that piece of equipment then does is not coloured by anything else. And that's really quite cool. I mean, you can use it to test things like, say you've got a guitar cabinet, you start to turn the guitar cabinet around, you can hear, just from looking at that guitar cabinet, what the sides of the cabinet only sound like, or the rear of it only sounds like, because the bit that's pointed at you is the only sound you get. Because in nature, most of the sound bounces off whatever room you're in and hits you at slightly different times and gives you a completely different feel to what the thing actually sounds like. That's just sonic physics right there. Acoustic Physics 101 is you hear the source sound plus the room, and in our case plus the microphone and the preamp and blah de blah de blah de blah. We can use that to our advantage as sound engineers, and of course in this case Bommel's used this to his advantage to capture these cabinets with a nice list of microphones without the room, which I'm really interested to try. Made at the Deggendorf Institute of Technology in their acoustic anechoic chamber. I haven't had a chance to try them yet. I promised that I would. I was going to check them out today, but it's been brutally hot and I've been trying to keep our baby from overheating because it's been... Seriously, I've been on the south coast of Spain. I get home to the UK, to England, and it's hotter. What is this? What's happening? Why is the world upside down? We've got the UK's version of Trump in office. Hell has turned to ice. Cats and dogs are lying with each other in the street. Rain is falling upwards. Everything is backwards. What's going on? So, yeah, really hoping to check these out very, very, very soon. But I would imagine I can get the room without the cabinet and combine the two. I would imagine so. I mean, yeah, this is something that usually you can't separate a guitar cabinet and its room from a room reverb unless you're ultra close with the microphone to the cabinet, where there is still some sound of the room, but because of inverse square law, you're so close that it doesn't make an appreciable difference. With these, you can pull the microphones back to change the response of the proximity effect to get the overall sound of a speaker rather than just a single point, but not then get the rest of the room. The easiest way to do that would be virtually, and I would imagine the easiest way to do that would be to get something like 2 Notes Wall of Sound, load up one of these, and then separately send that out to a convolution reverb, and then blend them as you like. What do I think about the Libra from STL Tones? Not tried anything from STL Tones, unfortunately. I keep getting asked that every week. I should really check them out, but again, just not had time. I've been out the country, so I've not had chance to check new software out in the last couple of weeks. I've heard things about the Will Putney stuff from STL. As much as, I'm kind of gaining a bit of popularity on YouTube as well, I'm not as big as some of you may imagine. That people aren't necessarily just throwing stuff at me to try, and I don't have £100 or £200 or euros or dollars to throw at everything just to try it and decide I don't like it. It's a tricky one right now, but hopefully as the channel grows I'll be able to try things, because like I said, I've got my studio, I've got real amps, I've got the real cabs. A lot of the time I don't need a lot of the virtual amp stuff. I've got plenty of virtual amps to be going at, so it makes logical sense in some ways for these guys to send me this stuff to try, because I'll probably try it for a couple of hours, appreciate it for what it is, give you guys honest feedback on whether I think it's useful and the features, and then move on to doing what I was doing. And they've not really lost anything, because I wouldn't have bought their stuff anyway, not because it's not good, but because I'm not the target market. That's quite important to say, I think, is it's not because of anything like, oh, I'm too good for virtual amps or anything. No, I'm just not the target market for it, because I'm a very high level nerd with audio stuff. Last year, or was it or just before the turn of this year, I made comparison videos of like 13 or 14 or 17 different virtual amps, all trying to be a PV5150. I've got enough to be getting on with. Most people don't want to do that. Most people don't need to do that. They don't want to be searching through every single one, which is why I make those kind of videos. And yeah, that's big part of what we do here, is we try and semi-scientifically evaluate stuff. I say semi-scientifically because there's only so scientific you can go before it's dry, boring, and no one wants to know. That's part of the shame of a lot of academia in some ways, that you want to get right down to the heart of something. You have to write an unbiased 50,000 word presentation and essay and all that kind of stuff, and by that point people are bored to death. So I do want to make things on this channel kind of fun, but also try and keep things relatively straight-laced so that most people can get something out of what we're doing. So on the topic of the anechoic chamber pack, so now that I've mentioned that, and I will check them out, shameless plug, I've got new cabs too. Ha! So these are far more run-of-the-mill in terms of the capture methods and that kind of thing. So I've called this the Progressive Metal Pack. So there's new cabinets that I've got. One I've called the God's Brit. It's kind of like, if you've ever heard of God's Cab, which is an old free impulse response set of an oversized Mesa rectifier cabinet. The God's Brit is an oversized Marshall cabinet with vintage 30s, which I didn't know until recently that Marshall had ever done an oversized cabinet, and it turns out they have. And it was back in the nu metal days when they made the Mode 4 amp. The Marshall Mode 4 amp turned out to be not particularly great. It was this 350 watt solid state amp. Not a modelling amp, it was just kind of, it had a tube preamp and then solid state output. And they didn't go down very well, but the cabinets were amazing. They're made like tanks. They've got made in England custom versions of the vintage 30, kind of like Mesa have custom versions made for them. It's not exactly the same design as the made for Mesa one, it's the made for the oversized Marshall variant. But yeah, even though it says it's a vintage 30, it's kind of a custom. Then there's the Big Beast, which has been a staple of our cabinets. The Zilla 4x12, that's been a staple for years. The Fat 15's one of my new favourites. Imagine a Zilla Fat Boy, which is... yeah, the Zilla Fat Boy is a 2x12 thick, deep cabinet. Now take those 12-inch speakers out and put a 15-inch speaker in that deep, thick guitar cabinet. It's a Celestion fullback 100-watt speaker, and it's an absolute monster. Yeah, I mean, I thought about trying to get a 2x15, as the Bommel just said, to put two fullbacks in. In fact, the 1x15 Fat Boy was custom made for me because I called Paul from Zilla and said, hey, what about it? And because it's a 100-watt version and it's so big and thick, his recommendation was just go with one. Because with a 100-watt valve amp, I mean, I'm not going to blow it. And the cabinet dimensions are the same, and because it's centralized in the same baffle, it just roars. Yeah. So it's an absolute... It's not as... But with being a 15-inch, you would think it would be bass heavy and have no top. But that's not the way it turned out. I would describe it as baritone. It's got a real low-mid grunt, and it's got some real upper-mid grunt as well, because that high end that you get on the 212 is just shifted down a little. Not like way to being dark or anything. It's just a bit more bitey. and it fills a mix, I can tell you that much. And then let's talk about the Tall Beast. Let's see if I can find the Tall Beast just in the virtual cabinets. I'm just going to search for it, if it'll let me. Ooh, boop. Hello. It's been a little bit slow right now. Yay! Just when I want it not to be. Oh, internet. You know just how to get me. Search Tall Beast. So, oh, while this is loading up, David just acquired a Yamaha SPX90. Yes, I had one of those, an SPX90 for a year or so. I kind of regret selling it, but I just don't use outboard a lot, which is why eventually I sold it to help fund other studio purchases. But yeah, it's the plate reverb on the SPX90 is beautiful on a snare. It's wrong, it's got loads of background noise, it's hissy as you like, but that snare sound, that is half of the sound from Paramore's Misery Business. That snare, which when that song came out, people were calling David Bendeth up and going, How did you do this? That's amazing. It's half a 14x8 Vinnie Paul snare, and it's half a Yamaha SPX90. And between them, you get a sound that sounds massive. Oh, symphonic bass chorus. Yeah, that's the other thing it's good for, is the Andy Wallace method. I used an SPX90, again, doing that for a while. I switched to using the Soundtoys Microshift plugin to do the same thing, because I could move the focus knob up so that things below 200-300 hertz were back to mono again, and everything above that was that big stereo thing, which really fills out a rock mix. But yeah, I was using the SPX90 for that until I found that the software version did it for me and I didn't need to be tied to my main control room. That's the main reason why I don't use outboard a lot. It's not because it's not good, it's because if I'm using outboard, that ties me to the room that has outboard in it. And I'm not always there. As much as I would love to just spend my life in my Studio One control room, a lot of the time I'm not there. I'll be travelling from place to place. I'll be at home looking after the baby quite a lot, but while she has a nap, I might be able to get half an hour's worth of editing in. That kind of thing, I need things to be available to me all the time. That's why I got a laptop that's about the size of a house, because it's powerful enough that it matches the processing power of Studio One's main processor, which means that I can continue working on a mix no matter where I am. Which people will then say, oh, but you can't mix on headphones, blah, 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 blah. Firstly, you can get used to it, which over 15 years of doing this, I'd like to think I have. But also, a lot of the time, I'm not necessarily mixing on headphones. I'll be doing things like working on Melodyne on vocals, making sure that the edits are clean on everything, making sure that, dynamics, that kind of thing. And then quite often I'll get a basic mix on headphones, bring it back to the control room when I have a chance, play it back, tweak things while I'm there so that I feel like the mix then gels properly in a proper control room environment. But then that means I might only need to spend half an hour in the control room, because all the Joey work, all the stuff that you would have an assistant engineer do if you were rich, is all done. Summing bass to mono below a cutoff. I'm pretty sure using Reaper that there are just inbuilt plugins that can do that. I don't usually do that. It's funny. I don't. The only reason that on microshift on bass that I then bring that focus knob up to not stereo split the low end is because really screwing with the low end on the bass can cause issues. But generally speaking, I don't go in and monoize the low end. I don't want to mess with things like that. For me, because the kick drum's down the middle, the bass is down the middle, the guitars on the extremities generally have everything below 100 hertz kind of shelved off. There shouldn't be too much ultra low end out on the sides anyway, and if there is, it's incidental. It's going to be there for a split second and gone. And to me, that then should be there because that's then part of the mix if it was a good balanced mix. If it was right in the first place, it shouldn't then be removed. You already have this cab in your license. Yes. Yes, of course I do, because it's my damn cab. I was curious because when mastering vinyl, right, if you're mastering for vinyl, a couple of pieces of advice. Yes, you're right, but I would use ozone for something like monoizing low end for vinyl because it's linear phase, which is really important for things like mastering. It's the tool to use in a mastering context for me. And otherwise, just don't go crazy on the levels and send it to the cutting plant. They will do that for you. They've made thousands of vinyl records at vinyl mastering plants. They will do that as part of their process. Quite often, their hardware going to the lathe will do that anyway. Any vinyl pressing plant, you don't need to worry too much about mastering for vinyl. Basically, don't overhype the high end, don't overly hype the low end, don't overly limit the tracks either, and you should be good to go because then they will do the rest. So here we go, the Tall Beast cab. It's loading really slow, which is kind of weird considering we're streaming at nearly 3 megabit. It must be 2 Notes' store. But yeah, anyway, you can see 3 of these pictures right here. So this is all the same cabinet. It's a 4x12 with kind of a vertical configuration. And it's got 4 different speakers in. An Alnico Cream, a Celestion Redback, a Vintage 30, and the G1235XC, which was a limited edition run. But I call it the Pulsonic, or the Pulse, because it was designed to sound like classic Pulsonic greenbacks. God only knows how they did it, but they did it, and it does sound, as far as I can tell, like Pulsonic greenbacks, but it's got 35 watt handling, so in a 4x12, if I was to ram a 120 watt head through it, the chance of it going bang is significantly less. Because an actual Pulsonic greenback would be not only far too precious to me to put in that environment, but it also, if it was a Pulsonic Greenback M, it would be 97 decibel sensitivity, which means it wouldn't be as loud as the other speakers, so it would get drowned out. Whereas the G1235XC, which is a horrible name, is 100 decibel sensitivity, which is the same as the other speakers in the cab. It's a sealed back cab. It's not got an opening on the back. It's front loaded. Which means it's really rigid. It's designed like the old Sun cabs, the ones that all the doom metalers use, and it's absolutely beastie. And I don't know why their server's being so slow. Is it because all you guys are checking these out at the same time? But yeah, it's yeah. See, thing about, Cubase is great, and I used to use Cubase back in the day, and it's one of those things, Cubase, where it's decent, but the cost for me was always too high, and the fact that every time they update, they want more money, that put me off, because the new features they were trying to throw at me, I was looking at going, I don't want this. I don't need it. Yeah, so the version increments from like 8, 8.5, 9, 9.5, 10. I don't need the new stuff. I don't want to pay for the new stuff, but then the software becomes outdated very quickly, whereas Reaper, which is my main jam, I bought a license for version 3, and they literally said to me, when version 4 comes out, you've got a license, you've got it. Pay us again when version 5 comes out. So when version 5 came out, I paid them $60, and then when version 6 comes out, I don't need to pay for that either. Yes, they don't fix bugs in the older versions, yeah. So yeah, so closed back, yeah, so the speakers react to each other by the column of air, yes. Yes, so a closed back speaker cabinet, the way that I would explain it is that, yeah, the kind of the benefit to a closed back speaker cabinet is the sound coming out of the front, because it's a sealed unit. As the speakers move, yeah, they push and pull with an air pocket that resonates and hums and thuds and whacks and does weird physics stuff to make the cabs sound kind of thicker and fuller and punchier, and there are so many adjectives you could use to describe it, whereas an open back cabinet doesn't do a lot of that, but the benefit there is that the open back throws the sound out into the room more, which means that depending on the context, you're much more likely to hear yourself clearly, which for me in the studio is not a concern, which is why I've always been drawn to closed backs. But yeah, someone asked before, did the studio work back in the day you have 4x2 meter plate reverbs, like the EMT 140? I have only ever used one in real life once, actually, and it was a wonderful thing. God, what studio was that? I think it might have been Futureworks in Leeds, where Kaiser Chiefs had been recording. And yeah, those things are a real cow to keep maintained, and they weigh as much as a small car. Yeah, so boy, they sound great, but I'm quite happy with a convincing VST version because of the thing I was saying about being able to pull up my entire mix remotely. Hey, you know what? If you don't switch to Reaper, I won't judge, because even though that's my thing, that's not everybody's thing. That's okay, that's fine. I'm not one of those people who's like, if you don't do what I do, you are scum, you are filth. No, I appreciate that there are people who have that opinion, like especially Pro Tools users I tend to find, and I'm tiring them all with the same brush. But it's probably because that's such a big user base, the 1% who are that nasty inclination. There's quite a lot in that 1%. That's just numerical, that's just maths for you. Yeah. So, it's one of those things. Yeah. But yeah, speaking about this cab one more time, usually 4x12 guitar cabinets, the back comes off and is then held in with a few screws and generally a kind of a wooden post. And you can get to the speakers through the back because it's an easy way of building them, which is why most manufacturers do that. Whereas the build method that this cabinet has, it doesn't have any access at the back, which is a lot like a lot of bass cabinets. A lot of bass cabinets are front-loaded, and they're put together so that the entire back is one sealed piece, which means it's very rigid, it's very tough, and it's very solid, and that means that with mounting the speakers at the front and having the back completely solid, the air inside the closed back reacts differently because it's a far more stable structure. It's like a different design of acoustic guitar. When you change the design in acoustic guitar, you massively change the sound, even though they are still 6 strings, that scale length, that kind of thing. But he regrets Cubase because the dongles are so annoying. Hey, I'm in the dongle club too, buddy. Even with Reaper. Reaper doesn't have a dongle, but a lot of the iLok stuff does. and I use Waves plugins, and because I switch from one computer to another, I actually have to have the licenses on a regular USB stick. So that's 2 dongles that I've got to carry around. Yeah. And yes, Reaper has lots of skins, so you can make it look like other platforms if you so desire. Yes, the best DAW is the one you know. Yes, indeed. I only switched from Cubase and Pro Tools to Reaper years ago because I was looking for something more efficient, and I found something more efficient, and I've stuck with it because of that. So yeah, this cabinet, there are 4 different versions in the 2-note store, one with the microphones on each speaker. So if you're a Vintage 30 fan, we've got that. The red back is a beast. The Pulsonic's more classic, and the Alnico is kind of like the Vintage 30 but a bit more naturally bright. And it's got all the microphones you'd expect. It's actually got... Here's a thing that we did. Because since I thought about these captures, the Torpedo range has all now got double mic functionality. Where it used to be that the live and the cab could only have 1 microphone on a cab, now you can have 2. So I decided when capturing this to capture an SM57, and separately as one of the microphones capture an SM57 at 45 degrees. So if I load them both up, what do I get? I get the Fredman technique, but not as a Fredman technique impulse. I actually get those 2 separate models in the Torpedo or in Wall of Sound working against each other to do the thing that the Fredman technique does, which is microsecond by microsecond cancel out certain frequencies to give you a really thick sound without that nasty 4K scratchy thing that high gain guitars often get. So you can now do that, just load those 2 mics up, blend them to taste, move the positions on the cab as you would like, move them together so that they stay together, and hey, you've got Fredman technique live in your Torpedo cab. How about that? Another thing is, it's got, I think these cabs have got a U87, which I hired. They've also got a Telefunken 251, but they don't, because I can't afford one of those, and even hiring one of those is really damn expensive. But I've got a Slate ML1 modelling system from the VMS, and I've got the Blackbird microphone pack, and I've found a way to model on the way in live to the capturing that we do, which I can't talk about too much because there's an NDA I had to sign, but I found a way to make that go live into their system. Yeah. So, yes, this cab I'm very excited about. There's a lot going on. I've also got a kind of a beardy, weirdy, kind of odd one that came up, which I think, here's a fun thing, what did I call it? The Mankman. The Mankman, there we go. This cabinet, as far as I know with this amp, there's only one of these in the world, and I find that really exciting. This amp will look to you a lot like something like a 15-inch Fender, or maybe even a Music Man 15-inch combo. This is a solid state 100-watt guitar amp with a tube preamp, and it's got a 15-inch speaker in that, as far as I can tell, was made in Manchester by a company called Mackenzie. The amp's by JCD Audio Design. I've googled them and found nothing, but this amp seems like it's from either the early 80s or late 70s, from the way that all the text on the back was and that kind of thing. It's an open back 15-inch combo, and why did 49 get into the word sweet there? That's weird. That's probably me bashing the keys as I'm trying to write out all the descriptions for 12 new cabinets at once. And that thing, if you wanted a kind of Fender-like sound but with more guts, there's your tone. Oh yes. But yeah, there's a lot going on. And it's already been an hour. I'm going to have to jet. But one more news topic. And that is, because we've been talking about the Ryzen from AMD 3000 series coming out. And how they're so much better and so awesome. And on the quiet, AMD have gone, hey, you know, this old stock, the previous model, we're going to absolutely slash the prices. Please buy them. Which is a big deal for me, because I like a deal. I love a deal. And the new Ryzen 5 3600 processor is really nifty and is £200 right now. So it's $220, something like that. The previous model, the 2600, is down to £119. So it's almost half price. And this is a 6-core monster of a processor. That is an absolute bargain. And you can get a motherboard for it for £50, $50. RAM prices are down now. If you want a 16GB kit that runs at 3000 megahertz, which is pretty fast, I'm looking at $75, £75 right now. Which is an absolute bargain. So if you've already got a case, a power supply that's half decent, a hard drive that's half decent, but your processor and motherboard are getting on if they are old, now's the time to strike, because this is more powerful than my main studio computer, which I paid £1,500 for, and it's on an absolute bargain right now. I'm really tempted, and I'm going to have to watch the studio's bank balance, but I'm really tempted to make a video where I make a really cheap machine based around this, because there's a 6-core processor with that whole hyper-threading thing as well. That's an absolute deal. It even comes with a processor cooler, so you don't need to buy one if you don't want to. I would probably want to, because that's the way I am, but yeah, I mean, yeah, so the 3600 is nearly twice the price at £199, which, for what it is, it's really, really good value. No Thunderbolt, though. I don't care about Thunderbolt. Sorry, guys, I don't. Thunderbolt and audio, for me, I'm not a universal audio guy, so I'm not bothered right now. And a few years down the line, when Thunderbolt is rolled into the USB 4 standard, which it is being, Intel have now signed the papers for that. USB 4 is going to have Thunderbolt in it. So that's a big deal. When that comes around, it's not going to be Intel only. So at that point, I'll make the jump maybe to Thunderbolt, but I'm on PCI Express at the studio, and over here, I'm happily on USB. I've got an Audion ID4 here, and I use the Sono. The ID44 is a cracking interface, and none of them use Thunderbolt at all. They don't even have Thunderbolt options. I was looking at getting a Slate VRS 8 or 2, but that's a big expense. But at that point, for Windows machines, there's going to be a PCI Express card that you can just use a connector without Thunderbolt anyway. So, yeah, unless you're a dedicated Mac guy, in which case you're not looking at any of this news. Yeah. Yeah. So you're still using an i7 Ivy Bridge? Yeah, cool. I mean, if that's not causing you any problems, don't upgrade at all. I mean, Intel's biggest problem over the last 5 years is they've not done anything. And to qualify that, what I mean is they've been running up against some serious production issues, so that the 4000 series, the 5000 series didn't really happen. So then the 6000 series, Skylake, is what I'm using in the studio computer, which was maybe 20% faster than what David's got. Then the 7, 8 and 9000 series have come out, maybe 10% improvement. It's not worth it for me to spend the huge money to do that, because I'm not struggling with mixes on my system. And yeah, all that Intel have been able to do is try and shove a few more cores on there at great cost to us. I mean, the 9900K is their latest and greatest consumer processor, that's £500, $500, something like that, just for the processor, not for the rest of the machine. That's a fair chunk of money. And when we're looking at a 6-core processor here, which is not far away from it in terms of performance, for almost a fifth of the price, that's insane. That's absolutely crazy. So there are X570 AMD motherboards coming out now that can work with this processor, with the newer ones that have Thunderbolt on them. There's one, I think it's the Creator Edition. That's not a cheap motherboard, but then anything with Thunderbolt, it's about an extra £70 on the cost of whatever the other motherboards would have been in that range. Even Intel ones, generally speaking, unless you're an OEM like Hewlett-Packard or Apple, they don't pay as much in terms of the tax, as it were, the Apple tax, the royalty tax for Thunderbolt. I'm getting a bit off topic. But, yes. Right, yes, so you're using a UA Apollo, which is why you're doing that, which is fine, but I refuse, like I say, almost every week, I refuse to be part of the UAD ecosystem, which means that Universal Audio are out for me because the extra cost for something I would never use, which at the same token means I'm not going out my way to use Thunderbolt, because none of the other companies really are justifying their use of Thunderbolt right now. It's kind of the in thing, and it doesn't seem to be making much in the way of inroads. I mean, RME is still getting ridiculous latencies over USB. God only knows how they do it, but they do it. Thunderbolt's marginally better, but at that point, we're really splitting hairs. And like someone said, Can Voodoo, looking at using a DigiGrid system, I'm interested in the Dante system, and basically audio over IP, audio over Ethernet. I find that fascinating, and that's probably where our industry is going to go next. Because if that gets rid of all the proprietary connections, if I can have really low latency in my studio and have an Ethernet cable running under the floor to the next room so I can plug a laptop in and get the same feeds, then yeah, that's absolutely the future. Now, yes, last thing I'm going to say, because I have to go and towel myself off, because good gravy, it's warm here. I mean, just to explain this to any of our US viewers, if you live somewhere like California and it's really hot, I'm guessing your house has probably got air conditioning, because in that part of the world that's normal, that's right. That's what you would do because the weather gets like that. This is England. We don't see weather like this. This is 30-something degrees Celsius. And we have nothing. We have a window we can open. If we're lucky. That's about it. So, last thing to sign off with, Marty V in chat said, how about Patreon, Bandcamp, clicking the bell and stuff? Right, so we don't have a Bandcamp, because we're not a band. But we do have a Patreon, which, if you saw the intro vid, and I'll play it again at the end as we head out, the Patreon really helps us to do videos like this. If you're not already a supporter, I certainly won't insist that anybody do anything, but anything like that is massively appreciated, because it really helps us to keep going and keep the lights on and keep making videos rather than having more studio clients in. More time for you means more videos for you, which makes us happy because it's what we want to be doing. As much as we love working with studio clients, that's a one person or one band at a time situation. And quite frankly, unless we win a Grammy, which is not going to happen because the odds are not in our favour working in England, outside of London, it's not going to be sustainable for life because of the way the industry is going. However, working with thousands, hundreds of thousands in the future, hopefully, maybe, of people on the internet means that we can then teach forever and ever and ever. And that would be amazing. And like I say, your help would help us to get there so much faster. And so it's massively appreciated. If you do want to be notified about new videos that come out, and especially the live videos, which are supposed to come out, the live stuff is supposed to be 8 PM UK time every Thursday. But if you want to be notified so that you don't miss the start, click the bell icon next to the subscribe so that your phone pings you or you get an email saying, hey, we're going live now, so that you don't miss it. Because it's really good to see you all here. But if you don't want to miss the start, of course, yeah, click the bell icon, and that will mean that you'll get some sort of notification. Now, yes, watching the uploads back to back without an ad blocker, that's very much appreciated. I appreciate that some people do want to run ad blockers, but those ads that you do watch do actually help me to keep my lights on at home. So that really does help if you watch the adverts that are on when it's my channel. But if not, I certainly won't have a go, I understand. So we try and be pragmatic and nice because we want our viewership and our comments section and all the viewers to be a nice place to be. So we certainly won't make any demands of any of you, but any help that you do give us is always massively appreciated. And so I think that's a good point to sign off for this evening. Thank you, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always. Hopefully we'll have Mr. Liam Wright, a newly married man, on the stream next week. And yes, we'll see you next week. Any questions you got, stick them in the comments section on the video when that goes up, because I have the YouTube Studio app on my phone, and anytime that anybody sends us a comment, my phone goes bing, which is why a lot of the time I can respond to people's comments on YouTube videos really quickly, because my phone literally tells me that's happened, so it's not as if I'm just sat clicking and waiting. So it's all good. Thank you everybody for watching, and we will see you next week, if not before. Thank you everybody. See you soon.